I read 15 books in March, so let's talk about them. This month I read 2 fantasies, 2 fiction, 3 romance, and 8 thrillers for a total of 5,445 pages. I'm not fully sure how I managed to read this many books in 1 month and this many thrillers in 1 month, which I did read an entire thriller series this month, but even then I feel like this is a lot of thrillers for 1 month. I don't think I've ever done that before. I also definitely have never read 15 books in 1 month before, so it's the first time for everything. I started March out with a bang by reading The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. This is one of the many thrillers I read this month, and I rated this a 4-star. I don't know why it took me so long to read this book. It has been on my radar for so long, and honestly the only reason I picked up this book this year was because it was on my 2025 TBR and I wanted to read it before. I think it's becoming either a TV show or a movie. I always forget which one it is, but it's getting a screen adaptation sometime this year, I believe. So I really wanted to read it before that comes out, and I'm so glad I did, and I'm so excited to read the rest of the books in the series. And if you haven't heard anything about this book, you're basically following our main character who becomes a maid, but things are not really as they seem. Things are very eerie in this house. She doesn't really know what's going on, and you don't really know what's going on as a reader until the end of the book, but it's got that really eerie, creepy tone almost the entire book. And then when things start to get revealed, you're kind of like, okay, I have no idea how things are gonna wrap up. At least for me, I had no idea, no predictions, and I love that in a thriller. I love not being able to guess anything. I have read multiple Freida McFadden books before, and I have enjoyed most of her books, so I did have high hopes going into this book, and I wasn't let down, and that is just so exciting. I love when I can have high hopes going into a book and not be let down. So I would definitely say this book lives up to the hype. If you like thrillers, definitely give this book a try. And I just remember for the longest time I was so confused on how this becomes a series, because I think there's 3 books. I'm not entirely sure, but I was so confused, and then once we got to the end I was like, oh, okay, this makes so much more sense. So hopefully I will get to the second book soon, because I want it to be a little bit fresh in my mind. And then I read Yellowface. This was another book that I had very high expectations for because I heard so many people rave about this book, but I ended up rating this book a 3-star. I was slightly disappointed, but I did have higher expectations for this one. Basically, you are following our main character, and in the very beginning of the book, her best friend dies, and they are both writers, but her best friend has always been, I don't want to say like the better writer, but she has always been more ahead of our main character. Like, she's getting awards and her books are selling out, she's making a lot of money, and our main character is struggling a lot. So when her so-called friend dies, she steals her friend's manuscript. And I say friend because one of the main problems I had with this book was that, like I said, we're in the main character's point of view the entire time, and the entire time in this book she is bashing on her friend so much. She has nothing but bad things to say about her friend before and after she steals her friend's manuscript. She is literally shaming her friend in her mind, and I'm just like, that's not your friend. Like, you don't talk bad about your friend like that, and if you do, your friend is not your friend, you know what I mean? So that part of the book bothered me so much, and I honestly could not get over that part of the book. And also because of that, and because of the fact that she is literally a thief, I found the main character so insufferable, and I just could not feel bad for her at all. No matter what life threw at her, I was just like, ha, whatever. And I feel like that for me is what really made this book a 3-star, because I cannot forgive. Like, I have problems forgiving characters in books. Plus I also feel like it was kind of hard because we were in her point of view the entire time. Like, I feel like maybe it would have been a little bit more helpful to be in someone else's point of view, at least for me, because like I said, I did not like our main character at all, and being in her point of view and not liking her really put a damper on this book for me. So a 3-star is not bad. I just almost kind of forgot that I read this book this month because I just wasn't obsessed with it. If anything, it evoked bad feelings for me. And then I read Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. I rated this a 4.5 star. I actually surprised myself on this one because I was very iffy going into this book. I was very nervous just because of things I've heard about this book, because this is a romance. It's very spicy, so definitely not for younger audiences at all. And knowing that kind of put me off to the book for a really long time. And honestly, I probably would not have read this book if it weren't for the video that I was filming that I read this book for. But obviously that ended up working out because a 4.5 star is so good. It was so close to a 5-star, but those spicy scenes did kind of just hold it back for me because I feel like it took away from their emotional connection. And when I'm reading a romance, that's what I want to focus on. But you have our main character who is a figure skater, and then our main boy character who is obviously a hockey player. And basically something happens to the hockey player's rink and so they have to start sharing a rank, and that's kind of where the relationship sparks between the two of them. And let me just tell you, the found family in this book is so good. I think that was one of my favorite parts because obviously he's on a hockey team, like that is a very team-driven sport, and so she ends up becoming friends with his hockey team. Amazing. I love that part of the book so much, and honestly that part is not only what made me love this book so much, but it also made me excited to read the rest of the books in this series. I believe it's more of an interconnected type of series, like they all just exist in the same world. I don't think you have to read it all in order. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm very excited for the rest of these books. And then I read and listened to The Celebrants. I mostly listened to this book, and I honestly kind of feel like this author might just be the kind of author that I like to listen to rather than physically read, which I'm not sure if that will make sense. Maybe that'll make sense to some of you. But I started this book out physically reading it, and I couldn't get into it, but I wanted to give the book a fair try because the premise sounded so interesting to me. So basically you have a group of friends. I think there's like 7 of them or something like that. It's a pretty big group of friends, but basically they make this pact to all have their funerals in person together before they die, basically is the pact. And it's so interesting to follow, and you basically kind of take a deep dive into all of these characters' lives, and it's not that long of a book either, but like I said in the beginning, I just could not get into it, so I switched to the audiobook, and I really liked the audiobook. And honestly the only reason I picked up this book was because this author wrote the Guncle series, and y'all know I love that series so much. It's one of my favorite series that I've ever read / listened to. I feel like that series was so fun to listen to, so I figured I would give this book a try on audio, and I am so glad I did because it did end up being a 3-star, and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. So if you're looking for a new audiobook, I highly recommend this book or the Guncle series by this author. So good. And then this is when we get into 4 of the 8 thrillers I read this month. I read the entire The Naturals series for a reading vlog this month. So if you want to know my in-depth thoughts on these books, I will link the video in the cards and down below. But I guess I'll give you kind of a rapid fire review of each book, and then we'll talk about the series as a whole. So The Naturals, which is the first book, I rated this a 4-star. And then I read Killer Instinct. I also rated this a 4-star. And then I read All In, which I ended up rating this a 4.5-star. I might have a different rating in the video I posted, I can't remember, but for the longest time I was toggling between a 4 and a 5 for this book, and then also for Bad Blood as well, which is the last book, and then I ended up settling on a 4.5 on this book. And this copy actually has the novella inside of it, so I did read the novella, which is 12, which honestly I feel like you can kind of skip. I rated it a 3-star. It was okay, it was fun if you're looking for, like, I guess a little bit more closure and you're looking to see what happens in their lives in the future, but then also you do get a little bit of backstory, which was my favorite part of that novella. You get a chapter in each main character's point of view from when they were 12 years old, and that was by far my favorite part of that novella, so that was very exciting. But if you have not heard of the Natural series, I feel like this whole series was having its moment maybe last year or the year before, and honestly I feel like it deserved more hype than it got. I feel like it didn't have long enough in the spotlight because this series is so good, even though I didn't rate any of these books individually 5 stars. See, now I'm like, maybe I should rate these 2 books 5 stars. I don't know, because I would 100% say that this entire series is a 5-star series for me. It was so good, and I actually continue to think about this series to this day, which I feel like is just a clear sign that this is a 5-star series for me. But if you don't know what the series is about, you are following teenagers with these natural abilities that the FBI decides to use on cold cases. And originally when I heard this premise, for some reason I thought that that meant it was kind of like a fantasy and they kind of had like some type of powers. No, it's just natural abilities. So one of our main characters can easily spot lies, one is really good at reading emotions, and then I think 2 of them are both what they call like a profiler, and they can kind of like profile. I don't know how to explain that. But these books are YA, so if you're looking for a YA thriller, or honestly just a thriller in general, I highly recommend these ones. Like I said, the last 2 books in the series are my absolute favorites. They were so good. And then I just kept reading thrillers for the rest of the month. Not really. I only have 2 thrillers left to talk about, but because I enjoyed those books so much, I feel like I was just in the thriller mood after reading those books. So I picked up The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. I was very excited for this book because I feel like this book is one of those OG TikTok books that just went viral when BookTok first became a thing. So I was very excited to read this book, figure out if I agree with the hype or not, and I don't. I rated this a 2-star, which is crazy because I feel like most people enjoy this book, and maybe it's one of those books that you would enjoy No, see, I don't even think that's the case. I was going to say maybe this is one of those books that you would enjoy when you first start reading again, but I don't think that's the case at all. I think that there's way better thrillers out there than this one. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's okay if we have different opinions. It's okay. Basically, you have our main character who's going to go visit her brother in Paris, and when she shows up, he is nowhere to be found, and you follow her along as she tries to play detective and figure out what happened. And I had a couple problems with this book. First off, she is a very bad detective, okay? If I was her brother in this situation, I wouldn't have high hopes. You know what I mean? Like, if I was lost and she was trying to find me, I don't think, yeah, no. I wouldn't be excited that she was on my case, if you know what I mean. And I say that because I found this book to be so unbelievably slow. In my opinion, not enough happens for this book to be thrilling and exciting for me. And I talked about this a little bit in my reading vlog, so I don't want to repeat myself too much, but this book reminds me a lot of The Perfect Couple by Ellen Hildebrand because of the way it's set up. If you've read that book, you know it is very character focused, and the mystery kind of gets put on the back burner in that book, which when I'm going into an Ellen Hildebrand book, it is not marketed as a mystery or thriller, and so I am not expecting that from the book. This book had the exact same vibe, but is marketed as a mystery slash thriller, and I wouldn't call it that at all. I think it is a very character focused story with a mystery subplot. Maybe that's just me, but I would not call this a mystery or thriller at all. So basically, in my opinion, there's better out there than this. I'm so sorry if you all loved this book. It was just not for me, and that's okay. And then I read Love and Gelato, which I went into this book wanting a lighthearted romance because obviously you can see I read a lot of thrillers, so I wanted just something super lighthearted, and this gave me that, which is crazy because it literally talks about grief a lot, but it manages to do it in a lighthearted way because our main character's mom dies, and that happens literally in the first chapter, and the only reason she decides to go to Italy for the summer is because that was basically her mom's dying wish, was for her to go spend the summer in Italy, which first off, that whole Italy setting was so fun to read about, but the romance that buds in this book, not only was it a tiny bit predictable, which I think is the only reason that I didn't give this a 5-star, but it was so cute, and ever since I finished this book, I have been excited to pick up the second book in the series because I already own the second book. I think there's 3 books in here. Also, this is a closed door romance because it is YA. I don't know if I said that or not. I felt like this was just right up my alley, and maybe I need to get into more YA romances. I feel like I read a good amount of YA mysteries and thrillers, but not a lot of YA romances, so maybe that's a genre I need to branch out into more, but highly recommend this book. I feel like I'm a little late to the game on this one, but it was so good. Like, I'm just getting excited talking about this book. That's why sometimes I don't trust my ratings. Like, a 4-star, maybe this needs to be higher. It was so good. Also, I feel like this book would be so fun as like a travel book, you know, like your plane book if you're going to Italy this summer, so might be fun to check out. And then I read my last thriller of the month, which was You. I was very excited to read this book because I feel like everyone raves about the TV show, but no one ever talks about the book. And you know what? There's a reason for that. No offense. I just did not love this book. I rated it a 3-star because I found it so intriguing the way that it was written, because you are in Joe's point of view the entire time, but when he's speaking about the main girl character in his inner monologue, he always says you. And I have never experienced that in a book before, so I found that so interesting. So I really appreciated the way it was written, but I found it unbelievably predictable. But basically the premise is that you have Joe, who's our main character, and like I said, you're in his point of view, and he works in this bookstore. He basically runs the bookstore because the owner is retired, but he works in this bookstore, and then he meets this girl named Beck, and it literally says on the back, as Joe invisibly and obsessively takes control of Beck's life, he begins removing the obstacles that stand in their way. Joe will do anything to ensure Beck finds herself in his waiting arms, even if it means murder. So I expected it to be very creepy and not something that I would predict almost everything that he did well in advance. But I will say I did talk to my boyfriend about my feelings about this book because he has seen the entire TV show, and he was like, yeah, I did think season 1 was pretty predictable, but I think it gets less predictable as the seasons go on. So with that in mind, I am going to watch the TV show because I didn't want to just predict the entire TV show as well, but I am not going to keep reading the books. I just did not like it enough to keep reading the entire series. I didn't think this book was bad by any means. It was written very interestingly. I just don't like when I can predict that many things, specifically in a thriller. If I'm reading a romance and I'm predicting things, I feel like that's okay. I guess that's a little bit more standard because there's kind of more of a template for romance books, if that makes sense. But with a thriller, I don't want to guess anything. Did rate this a 3-star, not bad, just not for me. And then I listened to Academy for Liars. This had such an interesting premise, and I honestly don't really know how to explain it without giving anything away, but to explain it kind of short and sweet, you have our main character who randomly gets a call and they're like, come to this interview. So she goes to this interview, and it's at this kind of really eerie, creepy school, and it's a fantasy, but it's a fantasy that takes place in the real world. I forgot what those are called, but the pacing of this book felt so weird to me, so wrong, and also it takes place at a school, but our main character has already graduated college, so it's kind of confusing in the sense that it's like, okay, well, where does everyone think she is, because she's already graduated college. Now she's telling people that she's like back at school, so like this timeline just doesn't really make sense to me. But then also everyone in the school is like a different age, so it's not really a school, but it is at the same time. And then things are like so slow in the beginning, and then they just take a way different turn. It just felt all over the place for me, which is why I rated it a 3-star. But if I was being super picky, I feel like I would give it a 2.5. Just 2.5 seems way too mean, because it wasn't bad, it just wasn't my favorite, and it just felt all over the place to me. I think maybe the problem is I like a little bit more structure in my books. It just went too much like this for me. And then I also read The Midnight Library. This was another book that I was very excited to read because I believe this is getting a screen adaptation this year as well. It might be next year, I can't remember. But the premise of this book is so interesting. Basically, they just live in the real world until our main character dies. She gets this option to go into what's called the Midnight Library, and she literally gets to like pick books off the shelves and try out those lives. And that just sounded so interesting to me, and it was really interesting. Don't let the 3.5-star on this one fool you. It was definitely a good book. I just found it a little bit too predictable for me, and then I also guessed the ending very early on into the book, and at this point you already know I don't like guessing the ending of books. If it's not a romance book, I definitely do not want to be guessing the ending, and this was a fantasy, so I was very disappointed that I guessed the ending, but it was still a very good book. I feel like this was a perfect fall time kind of cozier read if you're looking for something like that. I don't think I would recommend this for the summer though. And then I finished off March with Part of Your World by Jimenez, which I rated a 5-star. What a great way to end a good reading month with a 5-star. I don't know why it took me so long to read this book. Maybe that's low-key the motto of my life, but basically you have our main girl character who is a doctor, and then you have our main male character who basically lives the opposite life of her. He's out in the country, he's got goats, he's also the mayor of this small town. They are just polar opposites, so that obviously causes some trouble. And I don't know how else to describe it other than that, because I feel like you should go into this book as blind as possible. They have the cutest meet cute in the beginning, and you just follow their romance and see how they try to figure out how to bring their opposite lives together, which is probably where Part of Your World comes from. But whenever I see this title, I always think of that Disney song, you know, Ariel. I always think of that, but highly recommend this book. If you like romance and you thought about picking this book up, this is your sign to stop delaying and to just pick it up. You will not regret it. It is so good. It's also part of an interconnected standalone, which I think one of the books just came out the other day. That's also part of this interconnected standalone. So I'm very excited to read the rest of these interconnected books. I have heard nothing but great things about all of the books in this interconnected world. That was all 15 books I read in March. I have no idea how I managed to read this many books. Really have no idea. Hopefully I can do it again in April, because obviously I love to read. I love to find new books. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!